War. War never changes. In 1964, Failsafe and Dr. Strangelove were released some time after the Cuban Missile Crisis, when people became much more sensitive to the nuclear threat. With a diametrically opposed angle of treatment, one is a farce, the other one a dramatic thriller. Which one is the most efficient anti-war pamphlet? A technical failure opens the way to World War III by sending nuclear bombers to attack the USSR. A race against time begins. In a difficult telephone exchange, the American president, accompanied by an interpreter, discusses with his Russian counterpart to avoid the annihilation of millions of people. The demented general paves the way to World War III by ordering nuclear bombers to attack the USSR. A race against time begins. In a difficult telephone exchange, the American president, surrounded by his generals, discusses with his Russian counterpart to avoid the annihilation of millions of people. Both films were based on very comparable books. Stanley Kubrick was so concerned that the similar plotline of Fail-Safe would undermine his satire, Dr. Strangelove, that he had Columbia buy the distribution rights to Sidney Lumet's film and delay it until after the release of his own movie. The result was that Fail-Safe was a box office failure, even with excellent reviews. Nowadays, we are lucky. With the 4 minutes delay given by the use of intercontinental ballistic missiles, we wouldn't be worried for long. In the early 60s, the bombs still had to be delivered by plane. So we get to watch, almost in real time, the commander-in-chief trying to stop the attack and battling to gain the trust of the Soviet chairman.
I am as sorry as you are, Dmitri. Don't say that you're more sorry than I am, because I'm capable of being just as sorry as you are.
While the bomber crew, convinced that war has already begun, are trying to make good on their orders. Strangelove and Failsafe offers fantastic acting performances.
This was an accident.
The cigar-chomping U.S. general who, frustrated by the corruption of his bodily fluids, launches a nuclear strike against the Soviet Union, is both grim and ridiculous.
Have you ever seen a commie drink a glass of water?
Well, yeah, I can't say I have.
He embodies the dangerous madman, the crazy decision-maker. And that bothers me a bit, because the situations where we designate one lunatic as responsible make us forget that we often let these kind of madmen have the means of their madness. Peter Sellers played with virtuosity 3 roles in the film, including that of Dr. Strangelove, a weapons expert and barely reformed Nazi. But the MVP is George C. Scott. He's a hawkish general, borderless cartoony. Every one of his thoughts and emotions are visible on his face.
The hydrogen bomb.
And he sells them with the energy and conviction of sincerity.
You can barrel that baby in so low. I mean, you ought to see it sometime. It's a sight. A big plane like a 52 room. It's jet exhaust frying chickens in the barnyard.
That should have been rewarded with an Academy Award nomination, alongside Sellers. Peter Fonda, who already shined in Lumet's 12 Angry Men, is the embodiment of responsibility. And he's supported by a tense but impeccable Larry Hagman. The closest thing to an antagonist is Professor Groeschel, portrayed by Walter Matthau. Like the titular Dr. Strangelove, he's philosophically drawn from Herman Kahn, the man who developed theories on nuclear strategy, acceptable losses, deterrence, first and second strikes.
Deterrence is the art of producing in the mind of the enemy the fear to attack.
What makes us worth surviving, Groeschel, that we are ruthless enough to strike first?
Yes!
Those who can survive are the only ones worth surviving.
I won't spoil the ending of Failsafe except to say that it involves a decision that is obviously the only rational one under the circumstances. But it causes you to draw back in horror and think that we really should act, once and for all, to avoid such situations. First of all, let's talk about the names of the characters. The grim general, Ripper, the voluble military, Turgidson, the president, who struggles to make himself heard on the phone, Muffley, the Soviet premier, Kisov, the British captain, witnessing the general's delirium, Mandrake. Kubrick's movie, oscillating between satire and farce, allows him to have such obvious names. Most of them revolving around Eros and Thanatos, sex and death, the eternal attraction of our kind. It's strange love.
I watched you tonight. You'd love making it possible, wouldn't you? You'd love pressing that button. What a thrill that would be. Knowing you have to die, to have the power Take everyone else with you.
The two movies depict a humanity that designs procedures and machineries aimed to function with perfect logic, infallible safeguards.
The machines are supervised by humans. Even if the machine fails, the human being can always correct the mistake.
I wish you were right. The fact is, the machines work so fast.
Excessive confidence in technology, in our own mastery. This is a similar theme that we find in 2001: A Space Odyssey. We won't avoid a nuclear war with technology, but if we truly understand that playing with nuclear weapons is not a zero-sum game.
Every war, including thermonuclear war, must have a winner and a loser. Which would you rather be?
In a nuclear war, everyone loses.
In both movies, even at the brink of total destruction, ideological suspicions prevent the necessary transparency between sides.
We should tell the president it's a trap. They're just using the time to get their missiles ready and fly their bombers into position.
President Muffley has to explain to the Russian premier that one of his generals did a silly thing. Using these words about the nuclear holocaust as the epitome of what makes a great satire. Which Strangelove surely is. But it's so effective that it risks being self-defeating. By the end of this farce, we're practically ecstatic to see the world goes up in flames. In a more useful way, Lumet forces you to imagine the real, material consequences of what feels like an abstract game of numbers.
You missed the point, Professor. The saving of those 60 million lives is what's important.
In both films, the near absence of the common people makes the situation very intense. With us, the people, removed from the action, we become all the more dependent to the incumbent tragedy.
I cannot emphasize this too strongly.
We can imagine ourselves out there, living our lives completely unaware, as a violent disruption looms over our heads. 60 years later, Strangelove still feels so cutting, less fixated on suspense and its characters' wavering moral positions, than on the outright insanity of this situation. But that doesn't automatically make it a better hang. Lumet gives us the staid, professional Buck, as the translator tasked with helping the president.
I guess.
There's no Bucky, the character cartoonishly brought to life by George C. Scott. Instead, he gave us characters that care, and act accordingly. They seek to be fair, whatever the cost, not to take an advantage in another future gap or race.
I therefore order every American to cooperate fully with Soviet officers in shooting down our invading planes.
There's so little else in the movies apart from faces, postures, and gestures. Very few different sets. In Strangelove, we got the interior of the bomber, a few exteriors, and an amazing war room that will shape the popular imagery of such places for decades. The stripping is pushed even further in Failsafe. Sidney Lumet shot this black and white movie in a minimalist, documentary style, with almost claustrophobic close-ups, sharp shadows, and ponderous silences between characters. There is no original music score. This movie is deadly serious.
I know.
Conversely, in Strangelove, the imagery is sometimes grandiloquent, even grotesque. The scene of Major Kong riding atop a falling nuclear bomb is one of the most enduring images in cinematic history. The film originally ended with an elaborate pie fight inside the war room. However, the scene was cut, and the revised ending features a series of nuclear explosions, all accompanied by Vera Lynn's popular World War II song, "We'll Meet Again." As brilliant and grotesquely funny as Dr. Strangelove is,
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
the neglected Fail-Safe is the more mature and a damning view of nuclear fatality. Despite criticism from military analysts, rejecting the notion that a breakdown in communication could result in the erroneous go command depicted in the movie, it feels like it could have really happened. And it's terrifying as a result. And so the final winner is Fail-Safe. Are you ready for another fight?